Welcome to this episode of Riding Shotgun with Charlie. This one's going to look a little different, it's going to feel a little different, and it's going to sound a little different. I was fortunate enough to have a booth at the NRA annual meetings Radio Row, which is something new the NRA is doing at their annual meetings. I was able to do a number of audio-only interviews, and what you're about to hear is one of those. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, please do. If you're listening to the show in podcast form, please leave a positive review. And if you like the show, share it with your friends, because that is how we get the Stagecoach across America. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of Riding Shotgun with Charlie. This is one of the pit stops that we are doing at the NRA annual meetings in Atlanta 2025, and I am honored to have Brandon Maddox from Silencer Central on the show. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
This is a pleasure. As I said, our pre-show is about 14 seconds long, I think.
Yeah, that's all right.
And I come from occupied territory. I know nothing about silencers and suppressors.
Yep.
Nothing. So I wanted to have somebody on to talk about these and educate me and talk about the stuff that you guys are doing. Because you guys, there's some company that's like giving out suppressors. You buy a suppressor and they give you a 22 suppressor?
Right.
Is that you guys?
Yeah.
This is why I wanted to have you on. I'm like,
yeah, absolutely.
So tell us about Silencer Central.
Sure. So Silencer Central, the original company, started in 2005. Mm-hmm. So in April, we hit 20 years. Yeah, a long time. And really the only thing we've ever done is NFA and silencers.
That's it.
Yeah, and I started out in South Dakota. I'm not from there. I grew up in the Southeast, but my wife is from South Dakota, so ended up there.
Yeah.
And, the sort of the honest backstory on it is I bought a suppressor locally, and it just didn't go well. I just kind of felt like it was like, here's the paperwork, go figure it out kind of scenario.
Really?
Yeah, and that's when I was like, and I just told my wife, too, they were almost trying to make me feel like 1 inch tall. They're just really demeaning because they felt like I didn't know anything about NFA or firearms. Or the interesting thing is I'm not sure they knew much about NFA. But anyway, I ended up getting my own license, started working gun shows, sportsman shows, farm shows. And, if you look at per capita, there's more silencers in South Dakota per person than really any other state, just because I feel like I worked every show that was available, told people the benefits of suppressors, and they shot them, and then their buddies bought them. And so I know like Texas is the most as far as number of people, but if you look at per capita, South Dakota is by far the largest.
And it's all your fault.
Yeah, 100%. So I just started working gun shows, and very, very similar to a handgun. You can't sell to a person directly a suppressor unless you have an FFL in the state where they're a legal resident. Okay. So that prompted us over time to expand to where now we're in 42 states. So we have physical FFL locations, Silencer Central does, in 42 states.
This sounds a lot like the taxes on Amazon, right? Because if I this is nothing I know anything about, but I do remember hearing someone say that you don't have to pay taxes if you buy something on I'm picking on Amazon, but if you buy something from Amazon and they don't have a facility there, you don't have to pay taxes on it. And it sounds like it's the same sort of thing. You can't sell a suppressor in a state that you don't have.
Right, yeah, and I don't know as much about Amazon, but like just, almost like a handgun. So if you live in Massachusetts, you got to go to a dealer in Massachusetts to get a handgun.
Right.
Same with any state, really. Whereas, shotguns, long guns are different. In most states, you can just walk in no matter where you live. But suppressors, you got to get from the state that's licensed where you're a legal resident.
Gotcha.
So that's what made us over time just expand to all 42 states. But what's interesting is because we have a physical location, employees, everything in each state, Silencer Central can mail the silencer to your front door. So in a state where they're legal, like Connecticut or, another state up in the Northeast where Maryland, a lot of states up there where they're legal, there's a lot there aren't, but there's a lot there are. Mm-hmm. You could buy a suppressor from us. We do all the paperwork for you, and then it's mailed to your front door from our location in the state you live in.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, people, it's funny because when I first told the ATF I was doing this, they're like, well, no one else is doing that. I'm like, yeah, I know. But they're like, no one's even heard of this. And I'm like, well, I mean, the statutes allow for it.
Right.
And then they were kind of like, well, how are we going to train our people? No one's ever heard of this. And I'm like, that sounds like a you problem.
You know what? I'll train them. Here's the class. It's fine. Thank you very much.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And when we get inspections, it creates a million questions because they're just not used to anyone doing that. But anyway, that's our business model. You buy a silencer from us. We sell everybody's. We do the paperwork for you, and then we ship the silencer right to your front door.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
What's your background?
Good question. So I'm a pharmacist.
Okay.
I did undergrad in pharmacy school in North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and then went into the pharmaceutical industry. Based there in Research Triangle Park. I went to work for Glaxo out of pharmacy school.
Yeah.
Moved up through the ranks there. They forced me to go get my MBA. So, of course, I went to Duke because they were paying for it. And that was the most expensive school in the state. So
that's the way to do it.
Why not?
Someone else is going to pay for it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah, why not? What I would say prepared me for kind of most of what I do is probably on the compliance side, honestly, when I initially started the business. And when my wife is from South Dakota. She wanted us to move there. She found an opening for me. It was for head of a pharmacy, a mail order pharmacy. And what's interesting is that mail order pharmacy shipped prescriptions all over the country. And you had to have pharmacists that were licensed, not only the business, but people in every state.
In the state.
Yeah.
This sounds familiar.
Totally. So I told my wife there's less than a 0% chance that they're going to hire me. I've never filled a prescription in my life. Why would they hire me as their head pharmacist? It was Cigna, Teldrug. Ended up getting hired as the pharmacist in charge. They call it a pick. And just sort of like immerse myself in dealing with state law for pharmacy and then dealing with federal law and making sure we're compliant and in shipping of our medication to customers. So I sort of took that same model. I thought, gosh, no one's doing that for silencers. There's got to be a way to do it, you know?
That's incredible. That's incredible.
Yeah.
So how did you come up with the design? Like, did you take the one that you had that didn't really work well?
You know, that's a good question. So what I did is I went out and bought a military-grade sound meter. Back then, the famous ones were analog. And I tested every silencer that was on the market at that point, everything I could find. And back in early 2000s, is a whole lot less than it is now.
Sure.
So what I did is, working the gun shows, I would meet manufacturers. I met the Mack brothers out of Sturgis, South Dakota at the Rapid City Gun Show in South Dakota. And they said, we'd like to make suppressors. We've made some, but we'd like to make them for you and like to do your R&D. And, you know, they had both come from Dakota Arms, so I felt very comfortable with them in the manufacturing space and also very comfortable with them in the firearms space. So I found the silencer at that point that was the quietest, and I took one of every caliber to them and said, okay, here's your benchmark. You need to make something that's titanium so it's lighter than these heavy things. You also have to make it as quiet or quieter, and I have another twist. I want it to come apart and clean, even the center fires. Back then, you started seeing more of an evolution where people were allowing rim fires to come apart and clean, obviously because of the lead buildup. But you never really saw any kind of center fire that would come apart to clean. I think they were afraid somebody would take them apart and screw it up and then liability, whatever.
Sure.
But I just found that people at least in the Dakotas, sometimes shooting varmints, I mean, I would shoot prairie dogs, hundreds of rounds in a day. You want to be able to take it apart and clean it. It's a little bit different than a deer shooter who's, might be shooting 2 or 3 rounds a year.
Right.
But no, I ended up I let them come up with a design, the Mack brothers, and for a long time they did our manufacturing and our engineering, but now we've transitioned. We have an engineering team in-house, which we're excited about, and we also are putting in a range. We have a 3D printer, so what we do is our engineers will create something, they'll 3D print it that day, they'll go try it in the range. It just allows for quick innovation to be able to go through that R&D process very quickly, to have a range on site, to have a 3D printer so you can make it, and then also be able to test it right there.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That is incredible. What's the process to go through to get a silencer?
To get a silencer. Good question. The best analogy I have is it's simple as a title change. So think of the serial number of the suppressor is titled to me as the SOT, FFL, silencer dealer. In simplest terms, I asked the ATF to reassign that serial number from Silencer Central to that individual.
Okay.
Feds charge a one-time $200 tax per silencer. They obviously, the ATF ask the FBI to do a background check on you to make sure that you can legally possess it.
Right.
So essentially, they do a background check on you, and if you can legally possess it, they'll transfer the ownership from me to you. And then when it's approved, we're able to mail the silencer directly to your front door from our location in the state where you live.
The approval used to take, 6 months to a year?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I saw it during the Obama administration get up to a year and a half. It was bad.
Year and a half.
Oh, yeah, 18 months. It was bad.
That's insane.
But, I was up at the NFA branch with the ATF in West Virginia about 2 weeks ago, and they're getting an 80% approval rate within 24 hours.
Really?
And we see that as well.
That's very cool. Because
Yeah.
I heard it's getting a lot quicker.
Oh, yeah, it's super quick. It's amazing. So the FBI people tell me if the 20% that aren't getting approved instantly, they've been arrested before for something. That's what I said that's majority. Sometimes they'll say your identity matched with someone who's been arrested before. So typically they're like, that means you've been arrested before.
Right.
And then they have to check and make sure you aren't a felon. So it might take a few extra days, not necessarily just a felon, but they also have to make sure you don't have anything that would make you a prohibited person. Because
Gotcha.
you could have some kind of domestic violence or something like that
Sure.
wouldn't be a felony, but it would make you prohibited from owning a suppressor. But that number 80% is quick. That's a higher number than if you walk in and were to buy a handgun or long gun. Their numbers are in the mid 70s as far as
Right.
getting approved on the first. But no, it's created in my mind record demand. Silencer Central's expertise is really fine tuning the process. I would say that when I first bought a silencer in the early 2000s, it was sort of the dealer put the burden on me as the consumer to figure out the paperwork. I would say Silencer Central's sort of claim to fame is making the process easy by putting the burden on us. Like if we send you paperwork and we don't hear from you, it's DocuSign. If we don't hear from you pretty quick, we'll text you and say, hey, just a reminder, there's something in your inbox that you need
Right.
to sign, and then we can process your silencer. So think of Silencer Central driving the process for the consumer to make sure that they get approved as quickly as possible and as efficiently, and then get it shipped right to their front door.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
You guys really do take care of everything.
Yeah, we try to. I mean, it creates a lot of infrastructure to do that, and a lot of processes. It took a long time to build it. We're sitting on NetSuite, so it's it's highly, digitized. But boy, it's really humming. I mean, we have a 99.9999% accuracy rate. So when we submit something to the ATF, it's almost guaranteed it's going to get approved. If for some reason your silencer gets disapproved and it's our fault, like if we entered something in wrong, we pay for your tax stamp.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, we're that committed to making sure that, because I
Everything
told my
goes
team
well.
we can measure a tax stamp, and if I'm having to pay it, then I'm going to start asking questions about who's not doing their job. So I
Right.
said, let's create this metric and let's create this guarantee. So
That's
we say, hey, if
fantastic.
we make a mistake and it's on us, we'll give you your tax stamp, which is great because now the approvals are so quickly. Before, if you had to wait a long time if someone made an error, but now, if for some reason there's an error, which we rarely ever have one, then we can submit it immediately and get it fixed, and it goes right back through. And plus, you get the $200 tax stamp paid for. So
Very cool.
yeah.
That's pretty incredible. You've been taking these. Let me go back. Do you get any pushback from the anti-gun folks?
I
you
think
know-
I'm such a small niche that I'm probably off their radar, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I don't.
Small niche. You're everywhere. What are you talking about? Small
Yeah,
niche?
that's a good point. That's a good question. I of course, I'm always saying that if you look, silencers are not a public safety issue. If you ever read about a crime with a suppressor, dig a little deeper, and what you'll find is it was either homemade or they made it
Right.
themselves. They didn't go through the process.
Right. They put
Yeah.
an oil can on the end of their. Yeah.
Did something stupid. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I don't seem to get
That's-
too much pushback. But
That's good. I mean, that's
yeah.
good because overall, from the anti-gun folks, the silencers and suppressors get a lot of flack because only assassins use them, and
yeah.
But I interviewed somebody from England a few months ago, and uncouth is not the right word, but it's
Right.
it's impolite to
Yes.
use a gun without a suppressor on it.
Yes. No, I find that too when I travel. Even, yeah, I mean, pretty much most countries they're still serialized, but they're not treated as a firearm. You could just walk into a regular gun store all over Africa and just basically buy one and leave with it.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. What's interesting though is theirs are their mindset there is they're disposable. It's not a lifetime purchase, so they're typically bigger and kind of junky aluminum.
Okay.
Whereas, Silencer Central tries to focus on titanium, really small, lightweights. They see it as like a lifetime purchase. You're going to probably, Silencer Central creates a gun trust for you, no charge, and the silencer goes into that trust, and you can share it with other people. You can pick who gets it when you pass away.
Oh, cool.
So it's more of this concept of an heirloom in the U.S. than it is, overseas, where it's almost disposable. If it quits working, they throw them away and just go to the hardware store and buy another one.
Well, it's probably a little more disposable because it's a little easier to do.
Yes, exactly, totally.
Right.
But of course, as you know, in Europe, you can't find a firearm.
Right.
So it's like, I remember people always, the Uber drivers ask me what I do for a living, and I try not to tell them, but when I do, they're like, you'll never see a gun the entire time you're here unless it's with a, law enforcement officer.
Right.
And even then, that's rare. So it's a completely different world.
That is. And you take these things all over the world. You're hunting big game everywhere. You're shooting with a bunch of the famous folks, hanging out with everybody.
Yeah, no, it's fun. I mean, it's, just thinking about some of the benefits of hunting suppressed, you're going to get less recoil. So that's obviously a benefit.
Yeah.
I got to wear hearing protection, which is a benefit. Typically, when you shoot, whatever you shoot at, if you miss, you're going to get another shot because they can't tell where it came from. And I do find that you might shoot one game and then the rest are standing around wondering what happened to him.
Wow.
Why is Frank laying there? They don't even realize, gosh,
Well, that stinks.
yeah, poor guy. I wonder what happened. Maybe he's taking a nap. I mean, they don't know. They don't get it. They don't run off. I mean, I've been in scenarios where I'm like, all right, guys, it's time to leave.
Right. We got to clean this thing up.
Yeah, totally.
That's amazing. That's amazing. All right. Well, listen. Let's wrap things up here. Where can people find everything Silencer Central?
Yeah, just Google silencercentral.com. Go on the internet. Yeah, I mean we're doing a couple 100,000 silencers a year, so you can buy it on the website. You can call us from our website. It's a phone number. We have 25 guys sit there and answer the phone, and big shooters, hunters, target shooters. So really, any question you have about helping select the right suppressor.
Yeah.
I would say most people don't realize that you can get a multi-caliber suppressor, and you could probably, in most cases, get one that's going to cover every rifle you own, and that's very attractive to people. I think some people are scared to get into the game because they're worried about the process. We always tell them we make it easy.
Right.
Then they're worried about, gosh, so I'm going to have to get one for every gun. Nope. You can typically get one and cover all your pistols, or one and cover all your long guns. So, but yeah, they can call us, and we help them select which ones they want, tell them how the process works, how we're going to ship it to their front door. But yeah, I find that people do like to call in because then they have a point of contact. So if they have questions later, or things come up on how to use it, then they know who call their guy.
Right.
So yeah, call us or online, whatever's easiest for people, whatever's easiest for them, really.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, well, we're going to put some links in the show notes, and I appreciate you coming down.
Yeah, no, thanks, Charlie.
I really do appreciate your time.
No, I appreciate you having us.
When I found out I had the opportunity to do this, I'm like, what do I need to learn about? Who can I talk to?
So I'll tell you something cool, sneak peek. I'm thinking in July we're going to have a new shotgun silencer. It's titanium, 3D printed. It's lightweight. It's small. And I think it's going to go over well. That's right around the corner.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I'd like to say I can't wait to check it out, but living in occupied territory, I'll see it in magazines and on YouTube and whatnot, and all the socials. Wish I had one.
Absolutely.
All right. Very cool. Brandon Maddox from Silencer Central. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.